While retirement is generally seen as a time of relaxation and self-focus, God calls us to love, serve, and help others for a lifetime. He has been preparing us for this retirement season, literally our entire lives. In retirement, countless Christians enter a state of spiritual dormancy, not knowing how they are called to have an impact for God's kingdom. The Retirement Reformation seeks to encourage and empower the 50 million Christians approaching or in retirement to embrace the calling God has been preparing in them. When the world says it's time to stop, you can begin to have your greatest impact. Welcome to I Retire for Him, the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation, where our goal is to journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him.
Did you know that when you retire, your calling doesn't retire? Your calling is a lifetime calling, and if you're still around, God's not done with you yet. I know you're probably fully aware of what you retired from, but what did you retire to? What is your purpose? You've tuned into I Retire for Him, the voice and resource of the Retirement Reformation, an organization dedicated to you, the retiree who loves Jesus, but also wants purpose for all of your days, especially the ones ahead of you. Bruce Brinesmith joins us today. As the founder of the Retirement Reformation, he's here to encourage and walk with you through retirement. I'm your host, Jim Brangenberg. Check us out online at retirementreformation.org and online, Facebook, Retirement Reformation. You know, it's hard to face the facts that someday we're just going to need some help. Someday our bodies, if we get to live long enough, are not going to be as strong as they are today. We're not going to be able to do all the things we used to be able to do, and we're just going to need some help. As someone in their 50s who's walking alongside parents who are in their late 80s and early 90s, this is a conversation that we have all the time. I don't want to do things for my parents that will take away their independence, but there's certain things they can't do anymore. And if they try to do them and on their own, they're likely to get hurt. So how do we as family members decide what's too much help and what's not enough help? How do we decide if it's family that does the helping or if it's outside services? I know that money plays into this, but also relationships play into this. There's so many things that play into the fact that as we get older, we're going to need help. Bruce and I are going to parse through this today as we're living this in reality today in both of our lives. Bruce, here's the reality of our situation. You're 82 and you can't do all the things you used to be able to do, right?
Absolutely.
And my parents are 89 and 90 and they can't do all the things they used to be able to do, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely. So have you and Judy come to a point where a little extra help might be needed?
Oh, for sure we have. As a matter of fact, this is such a valuable conversation to have. And so I would urge our audience, if you've got a good friend who doesn't listen to these, please bring them into the conversation because it's so critically important. When we realize that we have those three stages in retirement, that retirement is 30 years. So we got these three stages of active, mentoring, and reflective. And in each one of those stages, there also may be not only just a mental component, but a physical component to it. So let me just use Judy and myself as a practical example. When we moved to Colorado Springs 9 years ago, we decided we'd never build a house, so we would do that. So we designed and built a house in the woods, and it's got 2.5 acres, and it's way larger than we need, and so on. But, you know, that was just good. And we had fun. I mean, it was part of our leisure. It was just a great way to move to a new area to do that. And, but about 4 years ago, so let me see, I'm 82 now. So when I was 78, and we built the house 14 years ago. So you can kind of get the sequence. Judy said to me one day, she says, you know, I don't think I'm doing that great a job of taking care of the inside of the house, and I think I could use some help. I said, well, it's interesting that you say that because we got 2.5 acres outside. I'm not sure I'm doing that great a job of taking care of the 2.5 acres, and I could use some help. What are we going to do? So we kind of went through the litany of options and then realized that the way our house is built, it's on 2 levels, and the lower level opens up onto the up into the forest. And Judy said, I wonder if there's any couples that would like to live rent free, but that she could help me with the inside and he could help you with the outside. So what a great idea. Long story short, we found a couple that it was absolutely perfect for, and they have been with us for 4 years. helping Judy with the inside, helping me with the outside. Great solution, next step. It was time in their lives for them to move on. So they did. So we had another crisis of opportunity, if you wish. What are we going to do? Are we going to look for another couple? Or in fact, are we going to take a step into independent living? And so we looked at each other, and I said, as head of the Retirement Reformation, I'll tell you, I don't know anything about independent living. And I said, that's kind of not too good. So let's, kill a couple of birds with one stone. And we went and investigated 12 independent living facilities in Colorado Springs area.
We like to call them communities, not facilities. It sounds so awful to say facilities.
Yeah, I know. Communities, whatever. And so we went and visited 12 of them. And there were major differences between all of them in terms of what they provided, what size space was available, what the costs were to get in, what the costs were to maintain. And then many of them had the preceding levels. You got independent living, and then you've got different levels of help that go. And obviously there's the economics of each one of those different levels. As a matter of fact, I was totally shocked. There was a new facility being built here in town, and so we went to their models, and it looked very, very nice. And so I said, take me through the economics of this. And they put up on a screen the economics of monthly costs and so on and so forth. But up at the top, there was a entry number, an amount to step into the process. I said, that number can't be right, can it? And they said, oh, yeah, that's correct. And I said, $677,000? I said, you got to be kidding me. And it was, just total shock for us. And they said, well, yeah, but you get 80% of it back when you die or move out. I said, so my estate gets 80% of that, and anyway, so on. So for us, that just didn't work at all. So the reason for sharing that whole story is that in each of our lives, there is a continuum of activities as we've prayed along with you and your parents, and the stages that have happened there. The fact that they moved from Arizona to Marionville. They have a small home, but it's literally next door to you.
Right.
And so the decisions of who's going to take care of whom and how and when are unbelievably complex and getting more so.
Well, what's interesting, I'll share from my perspective, because I'm on the other side of it, because I'm the kid, and my parents are 89 and 90. And I knew in visiting them, they lived in a golf community for 25 years in Arizona, one of those 55 plus ones that we talk about all the time where people don't have a lot of purpose. But that's a whole nother show for another day, maybe. And I could tell in my visits, because Martha and I would either drive or fly there 4 times a year. And I could see they needed help, because every time I went, my mommy do list was monstrous, 27, 30 things long. And they finally said, no, we're going to die here. We want to stay here in Arizona. They had a small group, a Bible study at church they loved. And it was a great small group. I consider some of the greatest warriors in the kingdom I've ever met in my entire life. But when we went at Christmas time, they go, no, we're not going to go. And we went at Easter time this year, 2023. They said, we're ready to move to Marionville. I'm like, really? Well, that's a change. And they were like, we realize we need some help. And that took a long time for them to realize that they're 89 and 90. In fact, we were there on my dad's 90th birthday. And in less than a month, God had provided a way for them to sell their house in Arizona and buy a house next door to me that just happened to be for sale by chance. Okay, God orchestrated everything. And they now live independently, but in my backyard. And they're able to still live independently. My dad's still driving, but now he's in a small town where the driving's not near as scary. And there's a grocery store in a mile. There's a gas station in 3/4 of a mile. There's the church is 4 blocks away. I mean, it's a lot safer place to grow old. And they've got a house that fits their needs. And there's things we need to do for them. But they also, because they had lived for 25 years in a community where everybody did everything else for them, they had lost a lot of strength. And Dad was surprised when I started asking him to do things, because my dad was an athlete, that he needed help. But it's amazing. At 89, 90, they're stronger today than they were 3 months ago when they moved here. And that's because they're being forced to do things. My mom can climb stairs today. She couldn't barely climb stairs when she moved here 3 months ago. And there's only 4 stairs to get into their house, but there's still 4 stairs. But what was difficult for me and my siblings, I've got a sister in Minnesota and a brother in Arizona, but my brother's a caregiver already. And my sister lives in the tundra where it snows 85% of the time in Minnesota. Not really true, but it's cold there. And Marionville is in the Bible Belt, and it's in a place where there's only a couple weeks of ice and snow. And this just made sense. And I had the most flexible schedule to be able to help take care of my parents. Martha and I do. But it was a decision where we knew it was going to impact our lifestyle as far as our time over the next several years, potentially. But it was better to do that than to put them in some community where they were surrounded by people they didn't know in a state that was still 1,280 miles away from here. It made sense to bring them here. And one day that opportunity will be, we'll have to put them in a community that is better adept at maybe handling them, or we bring in in-home services. But either way, it was a conversation that happened over a decade, a 10-year period of time we talked about it. And it was tough on me as a kid because I wanted to help my parents, but they weren't ready to ask for help. And you and Judy asked for help a whole lot younger than my parents did. But it was important. We wanted to make sure that they could thrive as long as they could, but they can't thrive. Like my mom's tired of cooking. She's cooking. Her mom was handicapped in a wheelchair when she's a little kid. So my mom's been cooking since she was 7. She was tired of cooking. And my dad only knows how to use the grill. And so they needed food. They've been losing weight. They put weight back on. So it just, everybody listening, just know that Bruce and I have two different stories, but the same stories, because Bruce's kids play into this as well. But we had to talk about it as a family and say, okay, what's best? And mom and dad had to agree because I wasn't ready to force my will on my mom and dad. I wanted them to really be able to enjoy these years. So, and now they're near one of their grandkids because one of our daughters.
When we come back after the break, let's talk about when we come back after the break, let's talk about some of the difficult decisions that have to be made in the family interrelationships that often can bring tension and challenge. That it's not just one smooth highway into the next stage of life. That liminal period and what can happen there.
That's a great idea. We're right back in our second segment. We're highlighting an interview today with Bob Tiede from Campus Crusade, but he has a phenomenal ability to ask great questions. And then our third segment, we'll pick up this conversation. You'll listen to I Retire For Him. We'll be right back.
Recreating Retirement is an interactive small group study helping you to move from nothing to what's next. You can join us on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. East Coast time on Facebook Live. Our goal for this study is to provide a group setting for interaction and new ideas while leading you through a first step in your journey from retirement to reformation. Here's the big idea. During the next 5 years, 5,000 small groups will experience this journey of discovery in churches and faith-based organizations across the country. Is your church a place where recreating retirement needs to be planted? Join us online to experience the study or prepare to lead a small group at your church or ministry. Email us at contactus@retirementreformation.org or go to our website at retirementreformation.org. That's retirementreformation.org.
Hey, welcome back to I Retire For Him. As we do in every second segment of every show, we always bring on a special guest that's got to share their story of how they're living out their faith in their quote-unquote retirement years. Today, we have Bob Tiede. Bob's got a lot of different accolades. He's known to be the guy on the campus of always asking the best questions. He's worked with Cru. Bob, I don't even know how many years you've been with Cru, but Bob's been one of my favorite guests on I Work For Him so many times. I wanted to bring him on because Bob's now in his mid-70s and he's supposed to be retired, but he just released a brand new book. Bob Tiede, welcome to I Retire For Him.
Jim, it's just a delight to be with you.
How many years have you been working with Cru?
52 years as of June.
Wow, that's incredible. Most of us think if we could stay with a company for 5 years, that's pretty good. 52 years is pretty awesome.
Obviously, I have no ability whatsoever to get a new job.
Couldn't get a job anywhere else. So, yeah, but raising money is no easy thing anyway. So we know that that's not easy. Bob, this show is a show that is there to encourage people that are just about ready to retire or already in retirement. So I thought it'd be fun just to talk about, you're already well into your retirement years, but God's not done with you yet. In fact, like I said, you just released a brand new book. What's God got? What's he doing with you right now?
Oh, Jim, thanks for asking. I'm 74, and I frequently share with people that means I only have 6 years of development left before God gives me the assignment for which I was born.
If you were Moses, that may be true.
Yeah, Moses, Joshua, Caleb, when they turned 80, they got that assignment. And now they got to do important things leading up to that. Well, sort of. I'm glad God hasn't had me herding sheep for 40 years to get me ready. But yes, I think the best is yet to come. This concept of retirement, many years ago, Bill Bright, founder of Campus Crusade for Christ, has been in heaven now for 20 years. But I remember a conversation with him in which he said, Bob, do you realize that retirement at 65 was not part of the social conscious of people until Social Security was passed, and they set the age at 65. He said, that's what now is in the mind of people. And I had not realized that, being born in 49, Social Security already in place. And But Bill also said the word retire doesn't appear in the scriptures. And because Bill Bright said it, I assumed it was true. But a number of years ago, I'm reading along in the Old Testament, and I come to Numbers chapter 8. Now, it's instruction to Levites, but in the NIV, it says that at age 50, they may begin their work of service in the temple. I'm sorry, age 25, they may begin their work of service in the temple. These are Levites. And then it says at age 50, they must retire. The word retire is actually there in black and white. And I circled it and laughed and said, I wish I could show Bill Bright. And now, in fairness, most of the other translations translate that phrase, that part, cease their labors. Mm-hmm. But the NIV chose the word retire. And I just laughed. And then I read on. And the next verse was very encouraging to me. It says, but they, referring to the Levites who had to retire at 50, but they may continue to assist their younger brethren, but they must not do the work of service. And Jim, in my crew career, as you know, first 8 years in crew campus, then from 79 to 2003, I directed the Josh McDowell Ministry, a division of crew. And at that point, I turned 55. We stepped away from that role, took a sabbatical. Crew brought us 7 opportunities. The one that resonated was leadership development. So when I read this passage in Numbers, I was already in leadership development. And mind you, this passage is not instructions for all believers everywhere. This was instruction to Levites. For me, it was a word picture. And that is that as you step away, perhaps from having responsibility for a business, a ministry, something set, as you step away, God didn't instruct these Levites at age 50 to go sit in a rocking chair. It says, but they may continue to assist their younger brethren. The role changed. And then, Jim, because I'm such a great Bible student, I looked at the passage again to see, was there another birthday listed? Like, at 50, you can help the younger brethren, and then at 65, quit that. No, I couldn't find that next number. The presumption is as long as God gave them health, sound mind, sound bodies, they could continue to do that. And Jim, again, on this topic, my lifelong mentor has been a guy named Bob Beal. And Bob and I were once talking about retirement, and he just made this observation. He said, Bob, I don't actually know any happy retired men if by retirement you mean do nothing. He said the ones that I see that are thriving are the ones that you could say are working part-time, but that part-time doesn't have to be paid. It could be a completely volunteer kind of position, but they still feel like they're making a difference somewhere. And I'm privileged. At 74, we have lots of flexibility. We've got 4 married kids, 8 grandkids, and flexibility to go and do. And, I don't have to punch the clock from 8 to 5. Sherry, my wife, would say I put in more than 40 hours, but I'm having fun. I'm having fun.
You just give me, you've released a lot of books, but you've just re-released a book, Leading with Questions. But yeah, there you go, right there. And is it the third version or it was the third edition.
Yeah, this is the third edition, but actually I didn't write either of the first editions. the first edition by Dr. Michael McCourt that I found in 2006 changed my leadership forever. And we ended up becoming friends. And when he got ready to do the third edition, he called me and said, Bob, would you be willing to co-author it? And I said, willing? Oh, my goodness. And so
that's because you've perfected the art of asking questions. I mean, you did a whole Leading with Questions Institute, if I may say.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you've been all about.
Well, we have on my blog, and I invite people to subscribe to my blog, leadingwithquestions.com. On there, I have 5 free ebooks. Great Leaders Ask Questions. Now that's a great question. 339 questions Jesus asked. 260 questions Paul the Apostle of Christ asked. And then a little book of quotes that relate to leading with questions. But my favorite quote, the word coach doesn't appear in the scriptures, but there sure is a definition given by Solomon in Proverbs when he said a person's thoughts are like water in a deep well, but someone with insight can draw them out. That is a great description of coaching.
And it's also a great description of almost everybody 65 and older. They've got this depth of wisdom. They've got this depth of experience. They've got this depth of life that they can pour into another, which is what the Levites were talking about doing. Hey, at 50, stop slinging the cattle on the altar. Let's go ahead and just pour that wisdom into the next generations. Bob, we're almost out of time already, and it's just amazing, but you've got such an amazing story. Would you please just share some encouragement on everybody that's listening to see the value of what they've experienced and pouring that into the next generations?
Well, Jim, we live in an age, and this is what I'm going to tell you is a bit sad, and that is many of the young emerging leaders have not had a dad in their life and have a father wound. Not everyone, but a significant number. And what I've discovered that's amazement is that when I initiate with a 20-something, 30-something leader, it's like, they're like, wow, I can't believe this guy would spend time with me. And as we spend time together, it's like, Bob, could we do this again? And I don't feel, Jim, that I bring anything special to the table other than a willingness to lean in, to hear their story, to ask, some great questions. What's going well? What's not? What needs to change? And just listen, become a friend, become someone praying for them. And a relationship is formed. And from then on, it's like they're reaching out. Bob, can we get together again?
How rewarding do you find that, Bob?
Incredible, especially when you hear back from them that you're making this huge difference in my life, but in my leadership. My team is better led because of the time I spend with you.
And that could be true of hundreds of thousands, in fact, millions of Christ-following believers who are sitting on the sidelines. Get back on the playing field. You don't have to run the plays anymore. Be the coach, be the mentor. I love that. And I love the Leading with Questions website. I love I've read every one of your books. I haven't read the latest one. Sorry, I just got it in the mail a couple of days ago. But asking questions is so powerful. And Jesus was really good at it. He ticked a lot of people off with his questions. They didn't want to even answer them. They were such good questions. Bob Tiede, any final words for everybody listening today?
I do have a final word. If you're listening and you're thinking, man, I would love to coach a younger leader, I just don't know how to get into it. One of the things that I have responsibility for is recruiting outstanding leaders from outside of Cru, many of them recently retired, to come alongside and to coach one of our Cru leaders. And if that has interest, go to my blog, leadingwithquestions.com, and down in a comment box, just send a comment. It'll come to me. Say, Bob, tell me about that coaching thing. I think I might be interested. I won't obligate you, but I'll be delighted to share it with you.
I love that. leadingwithquestions.com. Bob Tiede, thanks for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We'll be right back with more on I Retire for Him.
Our work on this earth doesn't end when the paycheck stops. God calls us to be faithful for a lifetime. Whether you're looking forward to retirement or you're already there, our all-small group study, Recreating Retirement, will help you understand, engage, and activate what God has for you in this fourth quarter of life. Join Retirement Reformation founder Bruce Bruinsma as you consider your past, strengths, spiritual gifts, and your passions, and how they all come together as the call God has for you in these years. Connect with us on our online community group at facebook.com/Retirement Reformation, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern, or if you'd like to bring Recreating Retirement to your church, email us at contactus@retirementreformation.org. Are you ready to start your life-changing journey today?
Hey, welcome back to I Retire for Him. As we're talking about really tough questions that families need to ask, but balancing the need for help for mom and dad and maintaining independence. Is family or outside services the solution? And Bruce and I shared a little bit of both of our stories, where we're at right now. Bruce and Judy in their early 80s, making some decisions to get a little help, and me help walking alongside my mom and dad as they're making some of these same decisions. Bruce, you mentioned when we weren't on the air, just the complexity when siblings get involved in making some of these decisions. Talk about your perspective.
Yeah, the issue, we don't have very many models. And that's why this subject is so very important. We don't have many models of the aging reality, and then the decisions that need to be made, and then the perhaps conflicts that can evolve out of that. So there's two different parts to that I wanted to make sure we touched on. One was the you ought tos, and the other one's we shouldn'ts. So what are the you ought tos? Well, typically in a situation where, in fact, let's say there's 3 kids. Parents are in their, let's say, late 70s or 80s. There's some signs that they're going to need some help. One of the kids lives very nearby them, and the other 2 live at a distance. So how is that responsibility for providing help if they agree that, yes, they need help and the parents are open to being helped? How do you decide who's going to do that? What is, and the conversation always goes around, what is fair? And each one of the siblings has a different reality in their life. You mentioned in your situation that you had a brother, I think, that lives in Arizona, but they are already caregivers. So asking them to take another step into that probably isn't going to work. Well, there's as many different situations as there are people. And so the who ought to, and then the question becomes, and should that be reflected in any way in a financial return? So, for example, when mom and dad die, and the way the will is set up, it gets divided a third, a third, a third. Yet one of the children spent 10 years of their life reacting to the needs of mom and dad, while the other 2 just came and visited once or twice a year. What do you do about that? And then the issue of fairness and appropriateness and so on all goes into the conversation. Matter of fact, what I see from the financial planning side often is that when when the senior couple is doing their last will and trust and the decisions that they're making about when they pass, and then they make a decision to go to XYZ Independent Living Center. That independent living center is going to cost, let's call it $5,000-$6,000 a month. That's about what the current going rate is, $5,000-$6,000 a month. So at least one of the kids multiplies 5 by 12, comes up with $70,000, and then multiplies that by 5, and that's $350,000. And went, oh my gosh, if they make that decision, I won't get anything. And so these really difficult situations, conversations, are complicated by money, complicated by who is going to step into the role, what is that going to mean, how are they being supported, and so on. Matter of fact, as we go along, I talk about that $5,000 number. What we learned in Judy's and my research, Jim, is in audience, is that as you go up into the different stages of need, if you go up 4 stages, you're talking about $10,000 a month. That's 120 grand a year. Now, if you live for 5, do the math.
It's a lot of money.
It's pretty awesome. So then that conversation, and we haven't really addressed it yet, but other than tangentially, that we have chosen for this part, and that will come to an end at some point, to have live-in help with us. When my mother had some dementia and it was clear that she couldn't live alone, she had another bedroom and bath in her home. And I said, Mom, why don't we, find someone to come live with you that can just be, absolutely not. I'm not living with anybody. Doesn't matter. And so finally it almost forced us to help her to move to a independent living facility because she wouldn't accept the help that was available there. So, and Jim, when we add on top of all of this 30 years, and there could be five different age groups that are of the same family that are alive at the same time, and the complexity of their relationships and the caring for maybe great grandmother and then grandparents and then parents and then kids. When you add all that caring questions together, it is absolutely complex and it is hard. And if you're not starting to think about that, be aware of it and plan for it as you go along, it's going to be really, really painful.
I think some of the things that we've been experiencing is that my father still thinks he's Superman, and he doesn't realize the help that he needs until he's probably hurt himself. My mom realizes it a little bit, but yet they fight it. So I think everybody listening, just understand you're going to need help because your body only Caleb and Joshua had the body at 80 that they had at 40. And we need to understand everybody else gets a body at 80 that's 80. That's not what it was at 40. And you're going to need some help, and it's okay. It's not it's not saying something bad about you if you ask for help. And it gives those that serve you an opportunity to be blessed because they get a chance to help you. Put aside your pride and just say, hey, I could use some help. Because honestly, very few, and I live in farmland, and there are very few farmers at 80 that can still throw an 80-pound bag of feed around. I've met a few, but most of them, their arthritis is so bad because of all the hard work that they've done. Bruce, I think a couple of things, and I just want to put that out there because that's what I've struggled with my parents more than anything, is that they just waited too long to ask for help. Like my mom only got a cleaning lady a year ago. I said, Mom, for crying out loud, you've got the money. Just hire a cleaning lady so you don't have to crawl around on the hands and knees. And the problem was she didn't crawl around on her hands and knees, so the floors were dirty. And every time I came to Arizona, I was crawling around on my hands and my knees to clean the floors. And I don't like to do that. All right. So here's a question I think, Bruce, that I want to make sure we answer. Should family feel guilty if they can't help? And the answer is no.
The answer is no, but there is another side to that.
Okay.
Are they, even though they cannot help physically or maybe financially or whatever, but in fact, they can be a resource of encouragement, of suggestion, of here's Mom, how you could do that. And so working with siblings that if you can't be there, that's just the way it is, but you can be an encouragement. Let me just give you an example with my mom. My dad died. My mom lived 15 years after my dad died. And she was living in Phoenix. We were living in California. And so I'm thinking, how can I be of help to Mom? I'm not going to be there physically. And I said, you know what I could do? I could give her a call every day. And for 15 years, every day that we were in the country, I called my mom and was able to be a resource for her, a sounding board for her, a friend for her during that 15 years. So to be able to be open and looking for things that you can do, even though your physical presence isn't possible. So The answer to your question is, should you feel guilty? No. Can you do something? Absolutely, yes. Matter of fact, I've got a book sitting on my desk that I think I'll hold up, and look what the title is. Everyone can do something.
Yeah, that's good. All right. So I like that. I don't think as believers, we should ever be motivated by guilt, motivated by purpose, motivated by the Holy Spirit living inside of us, but we shouldn't be motivated by guilt. Here's another question I want to ask, because this is something I struggle with, but is it all right for family to help and get paid to help?
Absolutely.
Because here's the deal. The reality of the situation, if you bring in somebody to just be there for mom and dad, it's $30 an hour. And if they're any skilled care, it's $50 or $70 an hour. So if there's just somebody that can come in and help just to be there, in case something drops on the floor, in case a little meal needs to be cooked, maybe a little laundry needs to be rotated. The thing I see my parents struggle with more than anything is making the bed, like changing the sheets. Like,
that's hard.
Yeah. Well, why do they make sheets so hard? They should have an automatic button or something for that. But what I see, though, is that it seems like family is, or the mom and dad are more willing to pay outsiders to help than they are to pay their kids. And I think there needs to be an understanding that when you're asking your kids to give up some of their free time to help, it's okay to give them money to help, because
it's okay for the siblings to know that is happening.
Right. It's not okay. It's imperative that they know.
There you go. Absolutely.
So
the family conversations dealing with what's real and what's true with God's love and, in the whole direction of the Holy Spirit. But man, secrets or unknown activities are just terrible.
Yeah. One of the things we've made sure is that because we're in direct care of mom and dad, we don't have any control over their money. My sister, who's far away, has control of the money. She also has control of the medical decisions, so that in the emotion of a situation, somebody outside can make a decision without being driven by emotion, because we'll be in the middle of it because they're right next door. All right. So how do you balance the desire of a parent to want to live their days at home instead of being placed in a community if services for staying at home aren't really available? What are the pros and cons? I mean, as you and Judy have looked at it, you're far outside of town. I've been to your house. You're at 7,800 feet. You're way out of town. Getting services to your home, should you need them one day, it's going to be more difficult. That's what we're realizing for mom and dad, because nobody wants to drive from Springfield or Joplin. How do you
let me tell you what Judy told me yesterday.
Okay.
We were in a conversation and a serious conversation. And she said, Bruce, I'm not sure exactly when it is, but it's sooner rather than later. I think we will be healthier and happier if we are in an independent living facility. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. I said, so does that mean that if the couple that we've now found that is going to be living and helping with us, if they don't work out, your choice would be to go to one of those independent living facilities? She said, yeah, I think so. Now, I'm not sure that would be my choice, but to listen to what my wife is saying is really important. My mom never wanted to go to any place else, but she wouldn't accept help in the home either. So, it was like, what are we going to do now? So when we finally moved to a facility, she died within 3 months. Mm. And she was never happy there. Right. So, you pray about it. You look at what's true about the situation. You consult with who it is it's appropriate to consult with. You make the best decisions you can, but realizing that, our parents have been our parents for all of our lives. And there will come a time when that transition happens and we become parent-like in relationship to our parents. And that's a tough adjustment to make.
Yeah, it is. And there's so many permutations that we can talk about in this. I think one of the things, just to answer your situation, is that you can gain independent living, but still be in a community where you have your own home, but you've got access to services. And that's powerful. But you have to be closer to town for that kind of thing. So it's not going to be out in the woods. And that's something that we found for my parents. We've got an option that's independent living yet there's access to services readily available. And that's the issue, because one of them might need help bathing. I don't want to bathe my parents. One of them may need help, whatever. I could help feed my parents. It's just some things that kids shouldn't have to do. I don't know, maybe that's wrong. That's just Jim's perspective. Bruce, this conversation has been a great conversation. It's something we all are going to face one day. I mean, maybe it's not for both of our parents, maybe it's just for one of our parents, but the retirement reformation, are we prepared to walk along people as they make these decisions?
Well, I think we're developing capacity to be able to do that. The first step in that capacity is to be able to mutually identify challenges, future challenges, opportunities, and ways that the decision-making can be made. And then I think there's probably a whole series of additional things that we can do that will continue to be as the retirement reformation continues to evolve. And for our listeners, please join us with this. Give us ideas, ask questions, give us examples of how you have dealt with a situation, because I think we learn in community. And when by learning in community, we also are able to avoid the issues of isolation and loneliness. And so as we participate together in the community of the retirement reformation, as it continues to evolve, please join us in that and be part of the solution and identification of the problems and the opportunities.
Yeah, share those stories. We want to hear your stories, because we can all learn from our faith stories. Because walking alongside our parents, or if in fact this is where you are at and you walking through the same situation, our faith plays a big part in all of this. And we need to realize that God wants to walk through us in all of this. And we didn't bring God up in all of this conversation. And I apologize to everybody in the audience. That was my job to do that. But there's a lot of prayer that needs to be involved in this. And God's got the answers that we need. And every one of us is created differently and faces a different end of life reality. But God can help us there. And we need to put our...
The good news is we do know what the final stage is. And we do know what the result is for those of us who have accepted Christ as our personal Savior and live in that reality. When everything else goes to heck in a handbasket, we can be absolutely assured that we know what that future is. What a great blessing.
And if you're not sure, listen to this podcast, you're not sure that you know where you're going to go when you die, give us a call at the Retirement Reformation. Look us up online, retirementreformation.org. We'd love to talk to you about Jesus and the guarantee of salvation and a life lived here on earth to its fullest and in an eternity spent with our Heavenly Father. You've been listening to I Retire for Him, the voice and resource of the Retirement Reformation, with your host, Jim Brangenberg, of course, Retirement Reformation's very own founder, Bruce Brynsma. We're a couple of Christ followers journeying from retirement to reformation so we can ultimately say,
I retire for Him.
Thanks for listening to I Retire for Him with your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg, and Retirement Reformation founder, Bruce Brynsma. I Retire for Him is the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation. Most Christians tend to follow the world's pattern of rest and self-pampering during retirement. However, in your retirement, you can be focused on God's unique call to love, serve, and help others. This can be your best season of life if you take advantage of a life's worth of knowledge and experience and combine it with a greater freedom of time and money and invest it all in the generations both preceding and following you. The Retirement Reformation is encouraging Christians to find and follow God's call in all seasons and aspects of life, especially in retirement. Take time to sign the manifesto at retirementreformation.org and explore the wealth of resources available on our site. Join this movement of God and journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him. Go to retirementreformation.org.